Hello and welcome to Record Sports Wednesday Night Hotline Live. My name is Daniel Conn. I'm delighted tonight to be joined by Record Sports Andy Newport. Andy, how goes it?
Very well. Yourself, Daniel?
I'm very good. It's great to be joined by you, particularly because, before we go any further, I believe you have an exclusive story for us on Rangers' potential return to Ibrox.
Yep, I'm led to believe that the club are exploring the potential to get back to Ibrox for next month's game against Dundee on the 21st of September, which would be a week earlier than planned, or certainly a week earlier than we thought would be the case earlier on this week, when we found out that the missing steel shipment had finally turned up at Ibrox. We work now sort of full steam ahead in that front, so that would mean that this weekend's game against Ross County would be the last match at Hampden as things stand, which I think would come as a huge relief to not only the supporters but also Philippe Clement and probably John Bennett as well. So they're obviously in discussions with Glasgow City Council at the moment, just over all the necessary safety certificates, just make sure that all the necessary checks around the work, once it's completed, that they get them signed off and they get the thumbs up from the council to welcome fans back into the stadium. But if all goes to head, and I must say it's still not far from guaranteed that this will be the case, but this is certainly the hope, the intention is that they would be like to be back at Ibrox for September the 21st, which, as I say, would be a massive boost, a rare bit of good news for the team right now.
I would say, I would agree with you in that, and especially because, on the Hotline Live, the last few nights we've talked about Rangers signing players and transfers, and we will talk about that a little later on, but you can't underestimate the power of Ibrox. Rangers need to get back there as soon as they can. That would give them a massive boost.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think everyone who was there that night against Dynamo Kiev when they crashed out the Champions League would attest to the fact that it really just wasn't the same. The noise levels were, a fraction of what you would normally expect in a big night at Ibrox. Obviously, it picked up a little bit after Yefte get his very harsh red card, but you talk about the Hampden roar. I mean, it was a whimper compared to what the team would usually have sort of rolling them on at Ibrox. So, yeah, I think they would all be desperate to get back. Listen, just from the logistical side of things, having to, move everything from Ibrox to Hampden, hospitality, sorting out tickets, even just down to the kit man having to go that extra couple of miles across the city to get the kits ready. I think all these things are just putting Rangers out of their comfort zone, and a time of the year, this summer where things haven't been going to plan for them on or off the pitch. Really, they can do with every bit of help they can get. So getting back to Ibrox, I'm sure, would be seen as a major boost for everyone at the club.
Aye, as I say, it's a big talking point for Rangers fans. Rangers Easy OK, who's watching live on YouTube, says, I said it after the Kiev game, we've pulled the team over the line time and time again in Europe in recent years at Ibrox. If the Kiev game is at Ibrox, we would be playing Salzburg tonight. I know a lot of kind of Rangers detractors will say, look, they were beat fair and square. They were, obviously. I actually kind of agree with that. I don't think Dynamo Kiev were up to much at all. I could easily have seen Rangers getting through that at Ibrox.
Definitely. It's not just Rangers. I mean, it goes for Celtic as well. And you think the power that these two clubs and the fans, they draw from their fans. I mean, with a Celtic team, back in the day, beat a Barcelona, beat an AC Milan, beat a Juve, were it not for the power that Parkhead produced? Probably not. It's the same with Rangers got to a Europa League final a couple of years ago. Would they get past a Dortmund? Would they get past a Red Bull Leipzig if it weren't for the sheer volume that those grounds are? That ground is capable of producing, and just the general layout of Hampden is a lot shallower. It's spread out a bit more. Doesn't keep the noise in the same degree that Ibrox does. So yeah, no, definitely these layout of these stadiums and the people within it are hugely beneficial to both our clubs. And so for me, I think the Rangers will be absolutely desperate. I think this is why they are pushing. Obviously, John Bennett said in his interview last month that the end of September was the target. People around the club earlier on this week, that seemed to be the target, but I heard a few whispers today, checked it out a few places, and yeah, it seems to be that they are trying to see if they can get in there a week earlier, which would have ramifications as well for Europe. If they can get that game against Dundee signed off, to get the green light for that, get the fans back in, and then potentially that would mean they could be back in as well the following Thursday for what might be their first Europa League game, if they are drawn at home for that fixture. So I mean, again, that would be hugely beneficial to Philippe Clement and his players.
Aye, absolutely. We've got a little bit of news as well on a couple of potential signing targets for Rangers. I'll come back to that though, because on the Hotline Live today and on Record Sports social media channels, one of the big talking points has been Manchester City's rumoured move for Kyogo Furuhashi. I mean, at first glance, it looked to me like one of these pie-in-the-sky wild transfer rumours, but I think it might have a bit of credibility. Fabrizio Romano is reporting, he's the transfer sleuth. He's reporting that Man City are indeed interested in Kyogo. And as I say, it's had a very strong reaction on our channels. I'll throw a couple at you. Jim Scott here. I can't imagine this is much more of a rumour. Man City planning a swoop for a 29-year-old with a dodgy shoulder whose scoring prowess has fallen in the last year. Kyogo is absolutely EPL class and will run riot down there. Man City saw his quality when we whipped them in pre-season. And Nick O'Donnell, we should only consider offers of around 65 million euros or better. We need Kyogo to fire us in the Champions League again. Whether or not, sorry, this one as well, Stephen Gunn, defenders down there will eat him. It's too easy to score here. I mean, whether you think he'd be a success or not, I think the idea, Andy, of Celtic potentially green-lighting a big exit like Kyogo when we are led to believe Matt O'Reilly's got one foot out the door, I just can't see the Celtic board doing that. I might be a bit naive. Obviously, everyone's got their price, but to sanction two big exits at this late?
Yeah, this late in the window, and also just given, how important Kyogo is, and it's not as if Celtic need the money, frankly. I mean, I even just checked earlier on just to see what sort of length of time he had left on his contract, just in case it was one of those ones where you thought, right, okay, Man City come in waving a wad of cash and he's only got 12 months left and it might be worthwhile, but he's got another 3 years left in his deal. So, yeah, listen, from what we're led to believe, it looks like, his name's somewhere on a list of targets down there. How high up it is on Pep Guardiola or whoever it is that makes the signing decisions down there, how high up is in their list, we don't know. Listen, would it be unheard of to think that, a guy of his quality, and he's absolute quality, and I've got no doubt that he could go down there, maybe no Man City class in terms of starting 11, but could he go down there and be a good squad player for them? Could he go down there and be a success in England? Absolutely. I think he's absolutely got the quality for that. So, but, where it would leave Celtic, geez, I mean, obviously they've got piles of cash sitting there if they wanted to go out and get somebody in, but just this late in the window, a week, 8-9 days to go until the window, I mean, closes. I think that would be the last thing Brendan Rodgers would want, especially when you're now chapping in the door of the Champions League group stages kicking off in a month's time. So it doesn't give you all that much time to get somebody new in. Obviously they've got Adam Ida in, but he's missed the majority of pre-season because he only signed late. So you're trying to bed then 2 players in late into your squad with an old firm game on the horizon, and then obviously this huge Champions League task, which is, I think, has to be Celtic's priority this season. They've won everything there is to win up here. They now have to start turning their attentions to Europe, making a mark there. So, I think that would be the last thing that Brendan Rodgers will be looking for, is to lose his main man at this stage of the window.
With plenty of more comments on this. Pat O, watching live on YouTube, has written in saying the Celtic board would sell the main stand to Man City if the price was right. Mark Fairfield has said Celtic shouldn't be selling any first teamers without getting replacements in first. Do you know, it's a weird one, Andy, because I completely agree you could do the business down south, absolutely. And I almost think weirdly, see if he was going to a Southampton or a Crystal Palace, I think he might struggle a bit more. I think in Man City, he would be, his movement, he'd be a brilliant signing, I think, down there.
Kind of light for light move in terms of, he's leaving one dominant team that enjoy 90% possession most weeks to join another one down there. So, listen, let's not expect him to go down there and nudge Haaland out the City lineup. But as I say, I mean, if he's a guy you're needing 20 minutes to come on and, run off the shoulder and tire out, defences that are out on their feet, then I think he's a perfect guy for that sort of thing. So, maybe his age profile might not exactly be what you'd imagine Man City would be looking for. But again, I don't imagine they're caring too much about resale value. I mean, they've got oil reserves. They don't really need to worry about cashing in on them at the end of his deal down there. So, no, I think I definitely think he could handle it down there. I think he's good. I think he's shown that in big games up here, certainly the odd game in Europe as well. So, but it would be a right. I think it would leave Brendan Rodgers pulling his hair out if he were to depart at this stage in the window.
Stephen Duff, who's watching on Facebook, says if Man City want him, Man City get him. I do kind of feel like in the modern game he's probably right, but I think for Celtic's benefit, I think they'll be desperately hoping that he stays beyond September the 1st. The other guy, Andy, that's been linked with Celtic is LAFC's Mateusz Bogusz. Again, apologies if I have absolutely butchered his name, but goal scoring midfielder. It looks like he's on the radar as a potential Matt O'Reilly replacement. He scored 13 goals in 24 MLS games this season. Look, I know that in clips on YouTube and stuff, anyone can look like a superstar, but this boy does look like a really good player.
Yeah, his numbers are decent. I had a wee look earlier on today. I think it's 20 goals, 14 assists over a couple of seasons he's had in America. So they're not bad numbers for, as you say, an attacking midfielder. It's just that there's always that little question mark about guys coming over from America. I mean, just thinking, we're speaking before we come on, obviously, try to think of some of the more recent recruits from stateside, and you're thinking, well, you've got Jose Cifuentes came to Rangers from obviously the same club that your man Mateusz is at now. I'm going to stick with the first name if you don't mind. And obviously he struggled. Obviously Michael Beale talked Jose Cifuentes up quite a bit and came up, talked to him being the guy to take Rangers to the next level, and quickly found out that he wasn't up to it and was promptly sent his way, and he's now playing in Greece as of last week. So, but then obviously you look close at the Celtic squad in terms of Alistair Johnson, obviously coming over from MLS2 and really being a success. So it's one of those ones, like any transfer, you've got to take a certain punt on it. The one thing I would say that maybe obviously differs him from Cifuentes is that he's Polish, so he'll be used to playing in a European setting. He's had a brief stint in England. He was at Leeds for a wee short spell, played a handful of games with them before going on loan to Spain and then obviously going over to America. So for just having a very brief look at his sort of these edited highlights, always, as you say, are put together to make you look like a world beater. He looks like a tidy player, looks like a technical player, which I think is always what Celtic is high in their list of requirements, that you have to be somebody who can handle the ball. You have to be somebody that can, be adept with the ball under pressure, and he certainly looked that. He also looked to be bits of soul. He looked like he was a grafter. It looks like, as much as he's expected to be an attacking player, he wasn't shy about rolling the sleeves up and working back the way as well. So all those will be crucial requirements when you're talking about Brendan Rodgers style of playing. Just that ability to press and press again, counter press, and then play forward. So it looks on the face of it a decent option. Whether or not it comes to fruition, whether or not he's there as a Matt O'Reilly replacement or just somebody to potentially play alongside him, we're still waiting to see. Obviously, a lot of rumours still flying about Matt O'Reilly. I think from Celtic's point of view, as much as they'd be loath to lose him, I think they'd rather the deal gets done quicker now and allows them just that, as you say, week, a wee bit of breathing space just to work out, make sure they're getting their ducks in a row for who they're bringing in to replace him, rather than having to leave it late until the last minute and then you're scrambling.
We I mean, I don't know about you, Andy, but I kind of feel that this transfer window has been the longest in recent memory, and the Matt O'Reilly saga, I kind of just want it to be over now. But Danny Dodds has written in saying Celtic should take 20 million for O'Reilly, but demand Abdullah Sima and is included as well. Just imagine. Now, that does take us to Rangers, Andy, and their transfers. Andrew Lamb has also written in on the same subject. Rangers should have bitten Brighton's hand off for a loan deal for Abdullah Sama with an obligation to buy for 4.2 million, as Brest are doing. I think the important point to make on that, though, Andy, is that although Sima has joined Brest on loan, they're nowhere near the size of club as Rangers. They are in the Champions League this season.
Yeah. I mean, and for any player, I think that's a massive lure, especially somebody that's not got the emotional attachment. Somebody sort of grown up in Scotland. I mean, I will say that I think Philip Clement was desperate to get him back, and it's just I'm just going to say Danny there that was on earlier on. He's going to be disappointed, obviously, because Seamer's away now. It's we were speaking to Philip Clement in the summer. I was away with Rangers in pre-season, and he spoke about Abdullah Sima being one of his sons, and he was desperate to have him back. He'd been phoning him, been having conversations with him, just keeping in touch, making sure that he was abreast of anything that happens with his situation, and it's just sheer. I would say it'll be really frustrating for Clement because he must have a list of targets he's ready to press the button on, but Rangers just can't do anything until they get bodies off the books. Obviously, the manager spoke about that last week about just the wage bill's too high, they need to cut it down, and until that's done, that they can't really press ahead. And I think that's the concern. You're, as I say, we're just over a week away from the window closing, and Rangers are really dependent on other people coming in, taking players off their hands before they can press ahead with their own plans. So, I think they'll be frustrated to lose Seamark because I think he showed you when fit last year. I think it's 16, 17 goals. 16 of them before he got injured. I think he only got the one after he came back in that Old Firm game, the 3-each game. But it showed that he was such an effective player. It's funny, I always used to speak to sort of colleagues and go, it's funny, you look at him, you think, you hold Seam up against a Ryan Kent who also played in a similar position, that wide left role, and you would say, my God, Ryan Kent's a far more technical, advanced player, far smoother on the ball, far more eye-catching, but Sima, just in terms of numbers, just absolutely would blow Ryan Kent out of the water in terms of what he produced. 16 goals, a handful of assists as well. So they were obviously keen to get him back, but that option's now closed, and they're going to have to look elsewhere. It
just shows you as well, Andy, going back to that Dynamo Kiev tie, even if Rangers hadn't made the Champions League, but had got through that tie, I mean, what is it they're talking about? £4 million they would have got for that, which is more than they get for a whole season in the Premiership, which seems obscene to me, but that's another discussion. But it just shows the kind of damage that losing that tie's done.
Yeah, costly, very costly. And, the manager spoke about how getting through these ties would be, you didn't expect to get all the money, but expected to get some of the money, and now he's not getting any of it. So, frustrating, I think, will be the word for that one.
The two other names that have been mentioned in Rangers' direction today, and is Tiago Gouveia. Again, I apologise to any Portuguese people watching for butchering his name. He's at Benfica, and Fiorentina's Josip Brekalo. Obviously, Andy, we have the transfer sleuth, the Scottish Fabrizio Romano, Scott Burns, who will be coming up a little bit later on the show. But he assures us Rangers are in for these players. They are doing their best to try and get both in the door at Ibrox. However, there'll be loans.
Doesn't surprise me. Just as we were talking about there, especially given that Champions League kitty, they missed out on that, £40 million potentially, even that £4 million for making the playoffs. So all that would have been, some of that would have been going quite nicely towards a transfer kitty. So the fact that they're going to have to try and be a wee bit more inventive, they're going to have to try different ways. We saw back in January in terms of Mohamed Diamande, they signed him on loan with an obligation to buy. They've done something similar this summer with Oscar Cortez. So, they spoke about wanting to try and get this player trading model going at Ibrox. It's sort of, seems to be sort of collapse out every time they try and get it kick-started. But, obviously signed a few younger players this season, but the necessity now for Clement is to get guys in that are ready for the here and now, that can come in and make an impact and contribute. Obviously, brought in Robin Proper, get to see how his groin is after coming off against St Johnstone last week. But he looked like he was ready to make a contribution when fit. Václav Černý as well has had quite a reasonable start so far. Again, they'll just be wanting to get him up to full fitness, and then you can really assess him. But from the small glimpse we've seen, there's certainly been positive signs. So they're guys that are seasoned sort of campaigners, if you want. Maybe obviously Černý, I think, is 26, Proper's 29, I believe. So guys that have been over the course before, know what it's all about. Černy's case has played international football, so that's the kind of figures you need to bring in now. If Rangers to have any intention at all of making even just a fight of this, never mind actually winning the league, but just to make a fight of it, they need 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 more in before Friday.
You think 5 starters, Andy?
I certainly think 3, 4. Yeah, I mean, you're thinking. I definitely think they need another centre forward, another left winger, another central midfielder, and maybe another left back, potentially another centre back. I mean, and that, obviously that's an ideal world. I think that's what Clement would be looking for. Whether he gets that, maybe unlikely. He has to sort of prioritise over the next week. If they can only get 3 or 4 in, 2 or 3 in, maybe then he has to think, right, where do we need it most? For me, I definitely another centre forward and a left winger would be the priorities. I think that's where Rangers are lacking, is that final third. I don't think they've got enough variety. I don't think they've got enough guile at times. I think they need different options. When they're coming up against different defences, there are going to be a lot of times guys sitting in, defences packed in. They're going to need to. They might have to, champ the door for an hour, then look to the bench and get somebody else that can offer something else on. So I think that's what they'll be looking for in the final days of the window. But again, it just depends on who can they get out, how much funds can they release in order to give that back to Clement and Niels Coppin to get guys in.
Rangers Easy OK again, and watching on YouTube, says it's just frustrating because Sima was so effective. We did the Cortez obligation to buy in early in the window. Maybe we should have done Sima instead. You go with that, and also, again, we've not seen him play. He could be a world beater, but Ingame as well. You think it was maybe around 1.5 million? Yeah. We're speculating because maybe Sima didn't want to come back to Rangers. Who knows?
I think Sima would have come back. I think he was certainly keen. Anytime we spoke to him last season, again, much like Clement, he spoke very warmly about the setup here and his time here. I think the stumbling block was Brighton. They were at that point insisting they're holding out for as high a fee as they could get. Talking £6 million around that time. That was just a fee that Rangers were never really going to be able to reach. I think they were hoping that if they could, obviously he's into the last 12 months his contract, that if they could sort of show a bit of patience and hold their nerve, that perhaps Brighton might just go, right, give us whatever, 3 million, 4 million, and hope to knock it down. But that was always on the basis that they had the money sitting there ready and that nobody else came in. And unfortunately, both those things have not planned out as they were hoping for.
You mentioned £6 million there, Andy, which turns my attention towards Cyriel Dessers, because as he exclusively revealed himself last night, he turned down a $6 million move to Atalanta in the MLS. Steve Teal's written in, Dessers turned down a $6 million move to Atalanta. The news has literally ruined my dinner. Sorry about that, Stevie. Shirley's written in saying Dessers has the best goal to minutes ratio in the league. He scored in every competition. Dessers is our only highlight at the moment. Which side of the argument do you kind of fall on, Andy?
A bit like Cyriel Dessers' form at times. A bit like his form at times. I come and go with the big man's concerned. Listen, what I'll say, one, he's a gentleman, an absolute top guy whenever you get to speak to him. So I don't need to be too harsh. But I've been critical of him. I don't think it's hard not to be, because there's times where he does things that frankly leave you bewildered. That like you're not sure what runs through his head in terms of his decision making. But then there are other times where listen, just think how bleak this season would be so far this year, this new season without him. I mean, I think that perhaps sums up where Rangers are a team where right now they're looking at Cyriel Dessers as being the bright spark for them. So what I'll say is I think he's in decent form, and not just in terms of goals. I think he's looked far more secure in terms of his build-up play. I mean, I was down at Birmingham in pre-season, and he went from the ridiculous to the sublime at one point. I mean, he tries to lob the keeper when a lob is never on, and the 7,000 or odd fans that were down there were pulling their hair out. And the next minute, he pulls off this wonder flick for Scott Wright, and that gets them back in the game. And then, but other than that, he looked pretty, just what we'd seen last season, erratic, I think was the word. But then he goes to Berlin in pre-season, scores a couple of goals, and generally played really, really well. I thought it was one of the best performances I've seen from him, and I think he started that way. Obviously, I don't think he was too great against Dynamo Kiev at home, but I don't think anyone was that night. But other than that, I think he's, obviously he came on it against St Johnstone when Rangers are sort of missed a barrel load of goals. Obviously gets the goal, sort of semi-controversial circumstances. I think if you look at the end, it was the right decision the referee reached. But he took his goal well. I think you can see there's a bit of confidence about him. I think you can see he's holding the ball up, he's taking it in, he's shooting first time, which I think you've seen at times when he looks a wee bit hesitant. He's struggling to get that shot away when the chances are there. I think you saw the weekend, he skips past the defender and absolutely nearly takes the net off with that finish. So, listen, I think if Rangers were to lose him right now without having somebody else lined up, and obviously you're talking about Hamza Igamane, well, we've got absolutely no idea how he's going to fit into this Rangers team, whether he's ready, whether he's a project for the future, does he need to go out on loan? We've no idea, we've not seen him yet. So, obviously Danilo coming back at the weekend and looking rusty. What I'll say about Danilo is, as much as I always think he, in general play, he was far tidier than Dessers, he had a habit of missing chances just as Cyriel Dessers did. So I'm not, again, sure he's the guy that Rangers can be utterly reliant upon to take the big chances when they come along next season. So if Dessers were to go, and if you're talking about $6 million, what's that, £5.5 million, again, they'd need to be pretty sharp to get that spent and get somebody else in to come and replace him.
Ian Firth says in the comment section, Dessers scored more goals than Kyogo last season. He was the top scorer in the Europa Cup competition the previous season. We need to keep him. And I wouldn't disagree with that at all. And you're right, Andy, when you say he is a lovely guy. Like, I remember on this show slighting him a little bit, and then I met him in the press area, and I felt so bad because he was, as you say, a gentleman. But you take $5 million for him, wouldn't you?
I think Rangers would have taken $5 million for him a month ago. And if they're giving themselves 5-6 weeks to go and reinvest it, now it seems much more like a gamble. Unless they've got somebody that they're willing to go and push the button on, dare say a Lawrence Shankland or somebody of his ilk, somebody that they can pretty much guarantee can come in and hit the ground running. Because what they don't have is time for somebody who's been out the picture somewhere and needs a pre-season, needs 5-6 weeks to get dipped in and out the team, much as they're doing with Czerny right now. They just simply don't have time for that. The window shuts on Friday night and Sunday night they go to Parkhead. So, if Dessers goes, somebody needs to be able to come in and be able to get their boots on and run out at Celtic Park. I simply don't think that they've got the time to waste on that front.
You mentioned there, Andy, Lawrence Shankland. He'll be in action tomorrow night for Hearts. They've got a very important Europa League playoff game against Victoria Pilsen. It's not going to be easy for them. Earlier on today, I caught up with Record Sports' Scott Burns, who was in the Dusan Arena ahead of tomorrow night's game. Here's what he had to say.
I'm joined all the way from the Czech Republic by the one and only Scott Burns. Scott, how are you?
I'm good. Yourself?
I'm very good, thanks. It's looks like a lovely day over in the Czech Republic.
It's been a lovely couple of days in terms of weather. Yeah, it's very warm here. I think it's a lot better than it is in the capital. So I advise all the Hearts fans travelling to bag the factor 50.
And you are obviously there because Hearts are taking on Victoria Pilsen on Thursday night in their playoff for the Europa League group stages. Pilsen, 5 games this season, 4 wins, 1 defeat. We know they've got a really solid home record. It's going to be a pretty formidable tie for Hearts, isn't it?
It is. It's going to be a hard one because you've touched on that Victoria Pilsen European home record. I think somebody had said since 2017 they've barely lost a game at home, and the ones they have lost at home, you're talking about in the Champions League against the likes of Real Madrid, Barcelona, Inter Milan and Bayern Munich. I think those are the only teams who have beaten them here in the Dusan Arena. So that sort of shows the sort of level that Hearts are up against tomorrow. Victoria Pilsen may not be a sort of household name in terms of heavyweights, but in recent seasons they're a proven European team, and they showed that last season when they got to the quarterfinals before they finally fell to Fiorentina.
Aye, they're definitely dealing with that, a really good outfit here, Hearts. And understand, Scott, you spoke to the Pilsen manager today, Miroslav Kubek. Was he in confident mood ahead of tomorrow night's game?
He's an experienced coach, a veteran coach. So you can imagine that he wasn't giving too much away, and he certainly wasn't giving too much away in terms of motivation towards the Hearts team and trying to fire them up. He was very diplomatic, basically saying it's a 50-50 tie. Obviously, there's no easy teams at this stage of the European football. He didn't give much away, but one thing that was intriguing was that he said that he wasn't sure what to expect in next week's second leg at Tynecastle in terms of atmosphere, because he didn't think that his players had played in that sort of cauldron before. So that's obviously something that's playing on his mind. And I suspect that he probably believes that he needs to get a result here rather than going across to Edinburgh, in front of a sold-out Gorgie to try and win the tie.
That's the thing. If Hearts can keep this tie alive, I know it's a cliche, but Tynecastle is one of the most difficult places to go, not only in Scotland, but I'd imagine all across Britain. It's a really intimidating, kind of enclosed atmosphere that teams will struggle to deal with. Even if there's a 1-goal advantage to Pilsen, I really would kind of fancy Hearts to maybe turn it round.
No, I agree. Tynecastle is one of the best atmospheres in Scottish football when it's full. The fans on the top of you, there's nothing like it. A lot of the opposition players say that. What an advantage it gives to Hearts. When Hearts are going well, when the team's up. I know it's a cliche, but they really are the 12th man. And these sort of ties, they could be massive. But in saying that, Pilsen, Victoria Pilsen, are a good team. I know they've got a decent, a European record. So they will be used to it. But any advantage that Stephen Naismith's side can use over the next 2 games, they have to try and use to the maximum. And
I know they've obviously got the guaranteed Europa Conference League group stage football, but it would still be amazing to get into the Europa Conference League. It would still be amazing to get into the Europa League. That would be a pretty big achievement.
And that's it. You've seen Hearts try to do it last time. Aberdeen tried to do it last season. They all just failed at that hurdle. And yeah, it's great that they fall into the Conference League. It's guaranteed group stage football. But they all want to go into the highest level they can. And that is the Europa League. But in saying that, people will argue that I think what chance of winning more games in the Europa Conference League? People say that, but then you look at the draws. It's just as difficult now in the Conference League as it is in the Europa League. That's true. But in terms of Europa League, you want to be there. It's more money, maximise it, and it's a higher level for Hearts. And hopefully, if they get into that stage, they can make an impact there, because you don't want to just go in there and make up the numbers, as we've seen in group stages with a lot of our teams in recent seasons.
Aye, absolutely. Away from Thursday night's game, Scott, anyone that follows Scottish football closely knows that forget Fabrizio Romano. You are the man in the know with the transfers. This is you're like Santa Claus at Christmas time. This is your time of the year. Before I let you go, is there any little tidbits you can fill us in on as the transfer window rushes towards its close?
I think Rangers are now pushing to try and do some business. Obviously, they've missed out in the Champions League money, so finances are tight, as Philip has said. So they are looking. News Coppin is just now looking for an attacking midfielder who can also play wide on the right. So they're looking at various options on that. Obviously they've been linked with the Fiorentina midfielder, Croatian Josip Brekalo. He is available. He's been put on transfer room, one of these new things that the club use to try and, rather than put them in the transfer list, they put these computer tools. Fiorentina have made him available on that. Rangers are aware of that. Rangers have asked the question how much it would cost. So he is one of the options they are looking at. And obviously they've been linked with Benfica wing in as well. Tiago, Gouveia, he is another one. But what I'm told is that Rangers, the priority is that position, a winger, attacking midfielder who can play as a 10. But the Rangers want a loan deal, and anything that comes in, it will be a loan deal. There might be an option to buy, but there's certainly, I'm told, as far as it stands, there won't be any obligations to buy in any of the deals they do. But that's what Rangers are trying to do just now. And at the same end, they're also trying to move on several players in the squad that I think most people know about, but it's proving difficult.
No.
And they might have to let them go and pay a large chunk of their wages, sort of thing, even if they go on loan. And Celtic-wise as well, I know it's all gone quiet with the Matt O'Reilly Brighton Celtic link, but I wouldn't get too excited about that going quiet for the Celtic fans. The two clubs are still talking. I think there's a desire, certainly Brighton are pushing. And I would expect probably news in the next 24 hours, but obviously Celtic will hold out for as much as they can, but talks on that front are ongoing.
And just finally, Scott, I know it was your exclusive story about Kevin Nisbet potentially being a target for Aberdeen. Any update on that? Is he the man to replace Bojan Miovski?
Well, certainly Jimmy Thelen looks like. To Jimmy Thelen, he looks like the man who wants to replace Bojan Miovski. I believe that there's been an offer made to Millwall, and as it stands, I think Aberdeen are waiting for a response from Millwall to see if that's acceptable. I mean, I think that it was pretty telling yesterday, wasn't it? Neil Harris, the Millwall manager, came out and didn't really close the door and Kevin Nisbet going anywhere. The reality is, I don't think he's part of his plans. He didn't sign him. He's got his own striker, Macaulay. What was it, Longstaff from not striking this summer? He wants to free up the money. He wants to bring in his own players. And I suspect that Kevin Nisbet will move on from Millwall. And I think if he does come up to Scotland, I know there's been interest from him, I think Aberdeen will get him. And I think Aberdeen are quite confident that if it goes there, they will get him.
A big 10 days or so ahead, Scott, live from the Doosan Arena. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope it's a good game for you tomorrow night.
Fingers crossed. Hopefully it's a good night for all the Scottish clubs playing tomorrow night.
Absolutely, and safe travels home when the time comes. Cheers, Scott.
Okay. Thank you. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
Scott Burns there from the Czech Republic, Andy. Obviously,
very modest, isn't he? I mean, doesn't even blink when you refer to him as a Scottish Fabrizio Romano. Just lets it wash over him. Very modest.
Mark Fairfield has written in, watching live on YouTube, we need the Scottish clubs to start helping with the co-efficiency ASAP for the good of Scottish football. Recent years have been some awful results. I think that's a very fair point. But these two games tomorrow night, obviously Hearts are away to Pilsen, Kilmarnock are away to Copenhagen. They are two seriously tough games.
Yeah, I mean, especially the Copenhagen game. You think about sort of levels of the Champions League they reached last year. So, yeah, tough. Listen, it's always been tough for Scottish clubs, especially the provincial clubs, to sort of get into these group stages. That's why it was so great to see. It'll be great to see Hearts playing, league stage, if you want to call it that, now this season, because it's such a rarity these days. And obviously, I think this might be the last year that we're guaranteed to have a third team in one of the group stages. So
I think it is.
So, I mean, it's been great. The money's come in handy. I think you've seen the way that Hearts have reinvested it. They've done it pretty smartly. It's just a shame we can't have it a wee bit longer. Hopefully the teams can get through, get a few extra points in the coefficient board, and we can perhaps cling on to that last spot. But it does look like it's a tall order for the nation in general.
It would be amazing if we could get 4 teams playing group stage football. It'd be brilliant. And to be honest, it's long overdue. But a country obsessed with football, this should really be a regular occurrence. But anyway, I guess we will see tomorrow night. I need to finish with this comment, Andy. I'll see what your thoughts on this is. Billy Aitchison, presenters drilling at the mouth. I don't know who he's referring to. Two guys not even in the national team. Supposed Motherwell fan, only when they play in green. I think, Andy, he thinks I'm Gordon Duncan from Super Scoreboard. I'm not Gordon Duncan, who I know is a Motherwell fan. We're both extremely handsome, excellent broadcasters. But
I know wee Gordon very well. I'm not going to say who's going to take that as a bigger insult. I'll leave that to you to decide. Okay. I say the wee man teetotaler takes care of himself. That's all I'm going to say. Likes a gym session. That's all I'm going to say, right? So I'll just leave it there.
I was going to say, I'll hold my hands up. I might be a pound shop Gordon Duncan, put it that way. But Billy, if you're watching, I'm not Gordon. Andy, I think that brings us to the end of tonight's Hotline Live. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I should say, for everyone watching at home, if you put in a comment, we really appreciate it. And we'll be back tomorrow night at 6 p.m. for another show. Andy, thanks very much.
Cheers, Dan.
And thanks for watching at home. Cheers.